Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where it's about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Season 1, Episode 7 of The Lazarus Project. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So immediately picking up in the aftermath of last episode, time rewound, Shiv. I love being able to see things from Shiv's perspective of, obviously, he got shot by George and killed by George. Last thing he remembers in waking up, it's like, yeah, in a time frame you were dead, a lot happened. So he's immediately going after George, having no idea that the rest of the Lazarus Project is coming after him. So I love the confrontation in the stairwell or whatever. And it's like, all right, I'm not going to shoot you, Shiv. The fact of the matter is, not only did I bring Sarah back, but I also brought you back, along with everyone else I killed. So that's a little bit easier in your conscience. Granted, yes and no, because I think I brought this up before. You still killed them. You had the memory of killing them. It's this very existential question of, you committed a crime, but no one remembers it because the crime never actually even happened. So should it stay with you? Should you feel guilty about it? Yes, because you still did it. You just had the fortune. You have the fortune of it no longer having been done. So everyone you killed came back to life. So but still, that's still going to be something that weighs on you. But for George, it's like, who cares? I did it. It sucks. But at the end of the day, all my crimes got undone. And it was all for the purposes of saving Sarah. And they're all back. Everyone ever killed, including Sarah, and Sarah being back alive too. So it's all fine. It's all good. So. And for Shiv, it's like, right, like, you're the one with the motive. He's like, no, you are. Because you were sending the payments to Janet, and now the Lazarus Project knows about that. What was interesting is where George was like, you were in love with her. He was like, no, she's just a friend. It's like, I thought it was just purely out of guilt, but maybe it's also guilt and love. So it's like, I guess he's always been in love with Janet, but she's always been with Rebrov. So I guess I was like, interesting. I never crossed my mind that there was something a little bit more. I thought it was purely guilt that motivated it, but it seems like maybe it's a combination of guilt about someone that he loves. So, interesting. Obviously, Shiv can't do anything because it's like, right, if he shoots George, it's going to make him look even more guilty. So Shiv just kind of walks away. But he does ask George, how does it feel to kind of get everything you want? Which George is like, oh, it feels good. He's like, we'll see if that lasts. It's like, the moment he said that, you're like, it's not going to work out well, will it? Because it's like, yeah, when you kind of get everything you want, that's when life decides to kind of screw you over. So, but George is happy. He's got Sarah back. He even stopped her from dying again. I love that he approached Home Dude being like, yo, dude, no. I saw that things went kind of wrong, but I moved some stuff around. And you got your money, because he knows that's what motivated it. And I love that it's like, yeah, he's responsible for your girlfriend dying in a previous timeline, but you're like, nah, man, we're good. Oh, yeah, see it. Kind of de-escalating that situation. But he still had that moment when the truck passed by and he kind of jumped a little bit because, understandably. But he's happy because, Archie's like, yeah, your girlfriend's alive and everything. So, I even love that bit they have about like, oh, he's like, you should get some. She's like, yeah, I should, we should stop that before I have to report you to the HR department. It's like, we have one? She's like, yeah, we did until I slept with everyone. I like Archie's like, but also, once again, I think that might not just be Archie. Kind of, I think it is Archie, but I think, once again, at least my understanding is, Brits have, a very dry sense of humor. So, she has, this very dry delivery of how she says some of that stuff. It's still got more, probably, it's not as dry as it probably could be, but it's probably, got a lot of dryness to it, and I think that's just kind of, British humor. But either way, she brought up something interesting to George where it's like, okay, we don't know where Shiv is. Shiv, if he doesn't want to be found, he won't be found. Same thing for Rebrov. He already knows we're coming, so. But something she had never given George, thought George had never considered in all this, and even I didn't. That didn't even cross my mind. It's like, well, Rebrov probably got himself caught on purpose. It's like, well, why would he do that? I don't know, to study us, to see what we know, and also to exploit our weaknesses. And George paused for a second because, I didn't think about it. And Archie was like, yeah, it's just a theory. But I was like, interesting, because now he knows how far George is willing to go for Sarah. because now he also recognizes, like, okay, so Sarah is to you what Janet was to me. So interesting, and that you could tell that got George a little paranoid, because he started like when Sarah wanted to go out with her friends, he's like, no, I'll go with you, because it's like, well, I want to spend as much time with you because I know what a life without you is like, because I've lived two of them. At least one of them you were dating someone else, but at the very least you were still out there in the world, and then another one you're dead. So I've kind of had to live those two timelines, and so, but my thought was like, it's that, but also like, yeah, but what if Rebrev comes around the corner and I just, so, but he's also like thinking about everything else, everything from the previous timeline that he did, so I was worried that he was going to become like the overbearing boyfriend. I thought that's what was going to become the issue, because his need to try and be around her, to try and protect her. I figured that was going to be the big issue, and I thought that was going to be what ended up doing them in. No, it's because, and this might not just, because it's hard to say, because we've gotten peeks into the relationship, but it's hard to say. I feel like it's been a long time coming, what's happening between George and Sarah. But anyway, we get to 3 months later. I'm like, that's still plenty of time for things to go wrong. Because now I'm starting to worry. I'm like, are you going to end up having a Janet situation? I mean, she was pregnant in another timeline and it didn't happen. And now I'm like, could it be that's going to happen in this one? She's going to get pregnant. Then you're going to start getting paranoid, and you're going to start going down the route of Rebrev and Janet. But 3 months in, it's like they're having dinner with, I think, her parents, and it's just like, a Paris situation, which obviously he hasn't been to Paris since like episode, was that episode 1? Was like the last time they were in Paris. So obviously the PTSD kind of like resurfaces from that. It's like, yeah, I haven't been in a while. And so you could tell like it was almost this thing of like, right, George doesn't want to kind of go outside of their comfort zone. That's why I'm curious, because obviously they've been dating for like over 8 years. Well, at this point, it's been like 11, because it's 2023. So I was curious if it was a situation of, was it just recently that George kind of was very stuck in his way, but Sarah was kind of like, when they're dinner in Paris, she's like, oh, you want to like basically dine and dash? And he's like, why would we do that? Oh, I actually want my dessert. You could tell she's like, right, let's kind of spice things up. And she wasn't really sure how to really, really bring that up. Because she was like, yeah, I don't want our relationship to get stagnant. And then later on, he asked her to marry him. It's like, right, where you want to go on adventures? Let's go together. And then the next morning, she's like, yeah, I can't do that. I can't marry you. She's like, I've been feeling this way. That's where I was like, I don't know if it's just the past 3 months, or was this just a long time coming? Because maybe George was very much like stuck in their way, and she didn't want their lives to kind of be stagnant. Because she's like, oh, you remember the first time we met? I was actually at that party. Don't even remember whose party it was, but I went to that party because I was actually going to hook up with a friend of mine, but then we ended up hooking up, so funny how life works out. But that's still kind of, it's sucky, because she's like, I should have said something last night, but I didn't, and now I'm doing this. I didn't want to be cruel, but the fact of the matter is, I can't marry you. I love you, I really do, but it's like, right, you're so, basically she kind of, it's like, because she was making this whole conversation about how we're not the same people anymore, but it's kind of like George is, but they both kind of are, and you can almost see George like computing it. Even you're kind of like, wow, that sucks, because Sarah has no idea everything he did to bring you back to life, the terrible things he did, and for what? For you guys to break up. And it's just kind of like, no. He's like, I can change. I can do whatever you want. I can do whatever you need me to be. And she's like, yeah, but I don't want you to kind of basically break yourself trying to fit the mold of what I need, like to try and like fit yourself. Like, hey, you're a triangle. I don't want you to turn yourself into a square just for the purposes of trying to like be with me. But for him, it's like, I did so much to be with you, because we're meant to be. It was meant to be. It's like, truth be told, it kind of was. I mean, but maybe it's because I don't think George remembers all, because we saw it during the summer of 2018. What was that, episode like 3? No, that was episode 2. We saw it during episode 2 that, like, I don't know if George remembers all those other timelines every time, like, Home Dude and Archie, like, reset the time. The timeline had to get reset because of Archie and them. So I don't know if he remembers all those timelines that we got to see. That it's like, right, him and Sarah didn't always get together. it was almost like, it feels like this timeline is just one of the few times they might have. So it felt like, oh, it might have been a thing of, oh, it was meant to be. It's like, cause we have no idea how things would have played out in those other timelines where, oh, they just missed each other. Just like, oh, things didn't line up. For things to be where they are, things just had to perfectly line up because it was just misstep after misstep of like, oh, just missing each other. Two strangers passing in the night type of situation over and over again until we got the timeline we did where it did work out. So it sucks though. Once again, it's just like, and even, he tried to talk to, Archie about it. Archie's very straight fact about it. It was like, yeah, that kind of happens to a lot. Like, it's like, she knew it was a possibility because it's like, yeah, time loops can really F up a relationship. Because I think, once again, it's like, because George had lost her, maybe he stayed a little, once again, I don't know if that's just like a symptom of their entire relationship, or was it just like the past couple months post like, hey, the reset and everything, and maybe he just held her a little too close. He was just too like wanting to stay in his comfort zone. But she's like, oh, we're different. It's like George is different after everything he went through, and it's just, she was completely unaware. I was like, man, that's wild. I mean, I can't blame Sarah. It's just like, yeah, just you have a feeling and you just like, you're not like, you love someone, but you don't like, you're not in love with them anymore. And like, it happens. I mean, at least she didn't wait till you were married and years down the road, like, yeah, I can't do this. I mean, it kind of sucks. She let you sit on it for a while. Like, hey, last night I'm waking up thinking like, yeah, we're going to get married. Oh, you're breaking up with me. I mean, because it's like, yeah, once she kind of turns down the marriage proposal, the relationship's kind of over because she's already saying, like, the reasons why she can't marry is also kind of reason why you can't and shouldn't be together anymore, so. But then, like, Archie tried to, like, make him is like, right, maybe her grand purpose in life isn't meant to just be with you. Maybe, like, hey, there's some cosmic reason why she is supposed to be alive. Maybe she has some greater purpose outside, because, people can have reasons outside of just being in a relationship, which almost feels like a larger commentary on, like, characters of, like, oh, yeah, we're this power couple and everything, but it's like, yeah, but, because a character can, in a story, can end up being defined by, like, oh, we're defined by, like, this relationship we're in. It almost feels like this meta commentary of, like, oh, yeah, like, Sarah does potentially have a larger purpose. I mean, her purpose, which is effed up when you actually, depends on, like, how meta you want to go with it. You want to go misogynistic a little with the meta, you could be like, oh, her character died so that George would be motivated to kind of cross the line and do what he did, but it was all not worth it, so, like, the cosmic role that she played in this story, but then you also have, like, the, meta commentary, like, well, maybe she does actually have a purpose outside of George, and I love that he's like, cool, like, you want to make this, like, some internalized misogyny that I got going on, that I didn't want my girlfriend, after everything, to, like, break up with me, that it's wrong, that I thought we were meant to be. But it's like, yeah, like, she's an independent person, she can have a life outside of you, she has a purpose outside of you, and other than just being coupled with you, George. And it's like, well, the next time you break up with someone, I'm gonna remind me not to, like, bring you to a bar, so I can basically shit on you getting dumped. And she's like, yeah, that's not gonna happen, but okay, sure. Like, I'm gonna be able to, I think, implying, like, Archie's like, I'll be able to do that on my own, but sure, I'll keep that in mind. So that kind of sucks. But they are looking into the Shiv situation because he had popped up in Hamburg, Germany. And then later on, there were some people. I'd actually skipped over something important, too. They had sent a squad after Rebrov, and he was expecting him, and he killed every single one of them. Even George was like, well, why would he do that? Why would he stick? They were like, yeah, he stuck around and did it on purpose. Why? Just to show us that he could. And it was almost, he was staring at the camera for a long time. So it's that look meant many different things to different people. Because in that moment, it's just, to the rest of the team, it's like, yeah, I did that. It's like, yeah, so I know you're coming after me. But it's also a little bit, I think, a little to George of like, thanks, George. I wouldn't be free right now if it wasn't for you. And these extra deaths are kind of on you, but George was kind of just living his life and not worrying too much about that. But then the Hamburg situation happened. It's like, okay, so Shiv might have been there. So what was he there for? And because looking at the photos of the mercenaries dead, there was a pendant that had a crow on it, which obviously he recognized as Janet, which I was like, did Janet go on to kill it? Like, Janet killed him? Because George was like, oh, how do you get by? And she's like, oh, we managed. I was like, does she take mercenary work or something? Like, is that what that was implying? But they went to the crime scene, saw like who got taken down and everything, and ultimately George and Archie were looking at it and found out that the person that was there was Janet. She was being held hostage. And now it's like one of the people involved, I think it was because there was one survivor of like the whole situation, I think. So it seemed like it was I don't know. I might be misinterpreting that situation. So I don't know if it's a thing of, wait, Janet was the one that was, I think, yeah, she was the one that was held hostage. And like this involves the Chinese government, which Wes was kind of like, yeah, there could be larger implications there. Because this person is supposed to be part of like a state, she was like a state secretary or something, but she might have been retired, but it's like, is she actually retired? So part of me is wondering, like, is that implying, and I feel like an idiot, are they implying, like, the Chinese government is aware of the Lazarus Project and kidnapped her? So is that why Shiv was there? Because she was used to draw, like, I don't know if they were after Rebrov, because maybe they knew about not only the Lazarus Project, but maybe specifically knew about him and Rebrov, well, her and Rebrov's history, and that he has Big Boy. But we have no idea. That's still in play. That's really interesting too, that like jumping ahead, we skip forward about 9 months. Well, 9 more months later, so it's almost been a year, and nothing had happened with the Rebrov situation with Big Boy. So that's why I'm like, interesting. So why he didn't do anything this time around? So was he selling it to somebody and then he stole it and they didn't do anything with it, or what? I mean, no reason why he detonated Big Boy in Paris was because like he was cornered. Like that would give him more time to get away because they would have no choice but to reset. So he probably was always planning on selling it. I don't think he planned on really using it. I think he probably planned on selling it to someone else. I'd assume someone else has got their hands on it and just in this year time frame and just haven't like detonated it yet. So I don't know. But Archie was sitting to kind of investigate that, and that's like the last we kind of get of that in the episode. And then we cut to June 30th, and you see the time frame. I'm like, okay, it's almost midnight, but because they're focusing on almost being midnight, you're like, okay, something effed up is going to happen. And then he's on the phone with Sarah, and Sarah's like, oh, do you want to talk like tomorrow? And he's like, yeah, sure. She's like, yeah, it's not important. At first I was like, there's no way you're pregnant or anything, because I mean, well, to be fair, I was like, it has been like 9 months. So are you going to be like, yeah, I popped out a kid, I just didn't tell you because we broke up, which would have been super effed up. But I was like, is that what that's about? I was like, the time framing would make sense. It has been like 9 months, so 9 months since like their Paris trip. So time frame wise, I didn't know if that was going to end up being the case, and I kind of felt like that might have been, but I was like, okay. I was like, but still, it's midnight. Something could go wrong. And the fact is, someone was at the door. I was like, oh, God, please don't tell me it's going to be Sarah sneaking over and he's going to accidentally kill her. Especially because we're this close to midnight. And it ends up being Shiv. And he shoots Shiv. And boom, the checkpoint is reached. And you're like, worst checkpoint ever. And yeah, so I was like, oh, cool. Next time reset, Shiv is going to be in the middle of dying yet again because the bullet just left the chamber just in. It's not like George hadn't pulled the trigger yet. He had already pulled the trigger. I'm at that point. You're like, Jesus, it's already too late. So it's, yeah, Shiv's going to come. That's super effed up because Shiv lives long enough to be like, oh, I'm back. Oh, I'm shot. Oh, I'm back. I'm shot. So this is a very fucked checkpoint. But he tried to save Shiv, but it didn't work out. Shiv had something in his pocket, but it was so soaked in blood, we don't know what the hell it was. I don't know if it was something related to Janet, because it's like, why did he go to George? I guess any other person would have just arrested him immediately. Like, I don't know. Because, like, I guess the whole point was, like, to disarm George. Cause it doesn't seem like he had a gun on him, but I guess he was trying to, like, right, because I'm afraid, like, hey, if I don't disarm you, you might try and shoot me the moment you get a chance. But it's like, what were you doing here? Irrelevant now. Has to dispose of the body. Granted, neighbor Reggie, it's like, oh man, their surround system sounds good. It's like, I almost felt like I heard a gunshot. Then he sees blood on George's shirt. It's like, yeah, I gotta go. I was like, and then he's also disposing of Shiv's body. I'm like, dude, there's cameras. Are you not worried? I mean, I guess as long as no one's looking at the cameras, they wouldn't know to look at it. I was like, I don't know. That seemed a little short-sighted. I mean, I guess it's like, right, your adrenaline's running, you're caught up in the moment. Try to dispose of Shiv's body. That is the most effed up. Like, once again, this show has like a weird, dark sense of humor because George puts Shiv's body in the car, tries to blow up the car, and then the body flies out and lands in front of him. He was like, well, fuck. I love that everything afterwards is like, well, fuck. Because it's like, okay, gotta deal with that. Gotta go back home. Oh, cool. There's still blood on the floor. Oh, crap, it's time for me to go meet Sarah. I was like, oh, and he's thinking like, okay, maybe this is a we will get back together conversation. And it's I wanted to let you know I'm getting married, which is so fucked in so many regards. Because it's like, well, for one, cool, I proposed to you, you didn't want to marry me, we broke up. That was 9 months ago, and you're already, not only you're engaged to someone else. Cool, who is it? And the moment he was asking about it, she's like, it's not someone you know. Because it's like, well, he knows Home Dude and Sarah got together in the timeline where he was acting a little erratic and crazy and they broke up. I guess that was also kind of an early sign of, I mean, granted there was extenuating circumstances, but it's not like you're 100% meant to be, but he's still holding on to the hope of, yeah, we were meant to be. And so for it to be a situation of like, now you're getting married to someone else, she's like, I didn't want you to find out. He's like, on Instagram or like whatever. And he's like, I don't stalk you or anything like that on your social media. And she's like, I know. Because he accidentally liked one of her pictures like after their breakup. Because she's like, as a teacher, one of her posts was like, oh, as a teacher, you have to plant seeds to grow, which I think was kind of like another shot after that. That was like especially super fresh after their breakup. But that was super messed up. I think I get it. You want to prepare someone that's like, yeah, we were together for a very long time, and so it's like, yeah, but he's like, this is something that could have been, handled in a text. It's like, yeah, especially how cryptic she was about it. You could have at least told me, at least over the phone. You didn't even we were already talking. You could have just told me last night while we were on the phone. You're like, but you'd rather tell me in person. Because she's like, right, do you hate me? And he's like, it'd be so much easier if I did. It's because I love you that it cuts me up and breaks me up even more. So I'm like, that's super fucked on her part to do that. He now also knows what that's about too. So, jumping ahead a little bit, but the reset, it's like, yeah, I'm not going to bother going to that now I know what it's about. Yeah, you're engaged. I'm not about to have to sit through that damn conversation again. I was like, that's awkward as hell. I don't know, man. I get it. She was trying to be considerate, but it also seemed a little, I don't know, man. Once again, it's also because I'm super biased because I'm like, George went through a lot, but, Archie's right. It's like, yeah, like she might have just been feeling that way for a while and just, once again, and maybe it's just the time loop of it all of like, hey, maybe these past 3 months of you being a boyfriend just kind of, you weren't as adventurous as she wanted to be. Like maybe you were just so stuck in your ways because you missed what you had so much that you held on to it a little too tight and became too routine and just this and that. I don't know. She didn't really kind of give you an opportunity to be like, oh, we can change, I can change. But she was like, no, you're stuck in your ways. Like, she was saying that they both had changed. And it's like, yeah, George has changed in a lot more ways than you're aware of. But still, it's like, I'm not trying to fault Sarah in that. It's just a shitty situation all around. So it's kind of like no one's fault, technically speaking. I mean, I guess it's the universe's fault to some extent. But yeah. Went back home, cleaned up the crime scene. I guess Reggie reported something, like maybe he had said something to somebody, because like why would like the cops, it was like an investigator, like a DS officer like showed up and it's like, why would you even like why would you like, it's because it seemed like it was at that point it was like, oh yeah, this was like 3 weeks ago, and I'm like, why would you even show up now after all this time? Like Reggie must have reported hearing something at the time. Like what would make you show up to even look into it, But it's like, oh yeah, there was camera of him disposing of the body. It's like, yeah, I guess like George never paid enough attention to that, didn't think about it. It's like, you had all this time and you still didn't do anything about that. Interesting. I guess he was so busy wrapped up with cleaning up the crime scene, dealing with the Sarah of it all. Granted, this time like, oh, I gotta be wary of that. But like the light flashes in the sky, I was like, what the fuck? And then like time resets and he's like, what the fuck was that? I guess that's the first time George has ever actually seen what it looks like. It looked like, I was like, that looked like almost like a heavenly event or something, the way that popped off. Because we have no idea how it actually fully works. So I was like, is there like a satellite beam or something that comes down? Because like literally the sky parted ways and a light shot down. I was like, that seemed more like heavenly than like cosmic, you know? It was wild. And then we reset to a shooting Shiv, and George was like, what the fuck was that? End of the episode. I was like, so maybe it has something to do with why he hasn't seen Archie for a minute. I have no idea, like, what happened in that time frame that they needed to reset. What's also interesting, too, is, like, they weren't in this time that long, which is interesting. So, whatever it is, whatever the reasons may have been, the reset's not that far. Like I said, like, disposing of Shiv's body and stuff, based on what that DS agent was saying, like, oh, yeah, like, didn't he say, like, 3 weeks ago at midnight or something like that? So, it's like, we were, like, 3 weeks into this new checkpoint. I think that was, maybe I'm misremembering. It hadn't been that long, so whatever went down that you needed a reset, not unless that's implying someone else has control over their Lazarus project now, like the rewind ability or whatever. I have no idea. Obviously, next episode's the season finale, so we'll get answers then about what the hell is going on. I'm excited to ultimately see how this all plays out, because Shiv's dying yet again. Once again, you still have no idea what that bloody note was about, or whatever it was, that paper that he had that you disposed of. You burned it, but because it was covered in blood, so there was no, like, recovering it. Maybe you'll try more this time around. I have no idea what to fully expect. It's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out and ultimately gets wrapped up. I mean, maybe wrapped up. Obviously, I know there's a season 2 coming, so I'm probably going to end on a major cliffhanger, but we'll ultimately have to wait and see. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.